I have a grown son. I'd like to believe we're close. We talk about real things. We've had honest conversations about where we see life differently. Most of the time, we respect each other's boundaries. There's love there. There's respect. But like any adult relationship, it isn't simple. There are moments I don't say out loud very often. Moments when I feel slightly moved to the side. Not rejected, not unloved. Just not central anymore. I'm not his only world. I'm not even his biggest world. And even though I understand that's how life is supposed to work, it can still be hard to accept. I was the same with my parents. My life expanded. My priorities shifted. Work, relationships, responsibilities took more space. That's healthy. That's normal. But knowing something is natural doesn't make it painless. There are times I still want to be the first person he calls when something goes wrong, the first person he shares good news with. I want to feel included in the center of his life the way I once was. And sometimes I'm not. It's a work in progress, and it isn't easy. As parents get older, this shift can quietly shake something inside. You've spent decades being needed, being the foundation. Then one day you realize the house is standing on its own. You're still loved, but you're no longer essential in the same way. And that can stir up something deeper than pride. It can touch identity. That's where the story of Grace fits in. After her husband passed away, Grace moved in with her daughter. It made sense financially. It made sense emotionally. She imagined warm mornings with her grandchildren, helping with homework, being present in a way she couldn't when she was younger and busy. At first, it was good. She felt useful again. Needed. There's real psychological value in that. Studies consistently show older adults who stay meaningfully engaged with family often report higher levels of well-being and vitality. Feeling useful matters, but usefulness can slowly turn into expectation. Grace started doing school pickups, meals, laundry. She didn't resent it. She volunteered at first. It felt like love in action. Then, one afternoon, she overheard her daughter say, "I don't know what we'd do without Mum." It was meant as gratitude, but something inside her tightened. Without her. Grace began noticing that her days were structured around everyone else's needs. She hadn't chosen a single thing for herself in months. Not because she wasn't allowed to, but because she had quietly stopped asking what she wanted. Autonomy isn't a luxury at any age. It's a psychological need. When we lose it, even gently, we can start losing a sense of who we are. One evening, after the children were asleep, Grace sat on the porch and asked herself a difficult question. If I wasn't helping all the time, who would I be? She loved her family. That wasn't the issue. But she had stopped being a full person in her own life. She had become the helper, the backup system, the quiet solution. Around that time, her longtime friend, Helen, visited. Helen took one look at her and said, "You look tired." And that was enough. Grace admitted she didn't feel like herself anymore. Helen surprised her. She had gone through the same thing. After her husband died, she too had moved in with her children and thrown herself into caregiving, until she realized she hadn't made a decision purely for herself in a long time. So she made one. She moved into a small apartment nearby, not out of anger, not rebellion, out of clarity. Her children struggled at first, but over time they respected her more. She wasn't the automatic babysitter anymore. She was their mother again, whole, independent, distinct. Grace didn't move out the next day. She started smaller. She took a 30-minute walk alone. No errands, no phone, just space. That simple act reminded her she still existed outside of responsibility. She pulled out an old watercolor set she hadn't touched in years. The first painting wasn't impressive. Her hands weren't as steady. But the act of creating something that belonged only to her shifted something inside. She began carving out protected time. A quiet cup of tea before anyone woke up. an art class at the community centre, conversations with people her own age about things that had nothing to do with homework schedules. Guilt showed up. It always does when you've spent decades putting yourself last. But she began to understand something important. Taking care of herself wasn't selfish. It was stabilizing. As she regained energy, her time with her grandchildren improved. She was more patient, more present. Their visits felt special instead of routine. Her daughter began stepping back into responsibilities she had unconsciously handed over. Eventually, Grace had the harder conversation. She told her daughter she needed a place of her own again. There were tears, fear, worry about what it meant. But there was also respect. She moved into a small apartment 10 minutes away. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. She painted one wall a bold color her daughter had always thought was too much. She joined a gardening group. She made new friends. She rediscovered parts of herself that had been dormant: poetry, painting, laughter that didn't feel exhausted. Something unexpected happened. Her independence didn't weaken the family, it strengthened it. Her daughter began carving out her own time. Their conversations deepened. The grandchildren saw her as more than the background helper. They saw her as a woman with passions, stories, humor. Love didn't shrink. It matured. That's the thread running through all of this. My relationship with my son, Grace's story. So many families navigating this quiet transition. Aging isn't about fading. It's about redefining. Our children building their own worlds is not a rejection of us. It's evidence we raised them well. But that shift requires us to build something too. We can't anchor our entire identity to being needed, because eventually, healthy children won't need us the same way. We're allowed to want inclusion. We're allowed to feel the sting of repositioning. We're allowed to admit it's not easy. But we're also allowed to say, my life still belongs to me. That doesn't mean distance, it means balance. Grace once believed staying constantly available was love. Later, she realized love also includes boundaries. It includes autonomy. It includes letting relationships evolve instead of freezing them in their earlier form. I'm still learning that. Some days I handle it well. Some days it hits harder. But I'm beginning to see that stepping slightly out of the center of my son's world creates space for me to rebuild my own center. And that's not loss. That's growth. If any part of this reflects your own experience, feeling moved slightly to the side, learning to rebalance, rediscovering yourself after decades of caregiving, I'm grateful you're here. These are not small transitions. They're layered, emotional, and rarely talked about honestly. Thank you for listening, truly. If you'd like, share how you're navigating this season. We learn a lot from each other in these chapters of life. And no matter where you are in it, your story is not winding down. It's still unfolding.